All right. Again, thank you everybody for being here. As you have questions, since we've had a few folks join, as you have questions, please feel free to take yourself off mute, or you can put questions in the chat to the whole group, or you can send them directly to me if that feels a little more comfortable. So wherever you are in your comfort level, just want to make sure that this is your time that you get to learn the things that you want to know about interviewing. So thank you, Andrea and Premier, for being here to just share a little bit about interviewing and about your company. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you for being here.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Davis. I am the University Program Manager with Premier. Premier is located in Charlotte. So we are South Charlotte. We're about 10 minutes from the South Carolina border. We do have our corporate offices open, but we maybe have a half a dozen or maybe a dozen employees in at any given time. We were 70% remote prior to the pandemic, and then I would say we're probably now 90% remote since the pandemic, but we still have our corporate office for company functions, activities, etc. So it is nice to meet you all, and thank you so much for taking time out to learn about some interview tips and tricks. So I would be remiss if I did not talk about Premier and who we are and what we do. Can you all see the Premier slide? I just want to make sure it moves forward. Okay, great, thanks. So Premier is a healthcare improvement organization. We work with approximately 4,400 health systems and hospitals across the United States. So what that means or what that looks like is, to give an example local here to Charlotte, Atrium Health, which used to be Carolinas Medical Center, is one of the health systems that we support. So we support them from their main location in Charlotte to all of their other hospitals that they have across North and South Carolina. And I think maybe they're venturing into Georgia as well. So that makes up some of our 4,400. And what we do with those 4,400 hospitals and healthcare systems is we look at ways to do two big things. One is, how can we help the hospital save money? So think about all of the stuff that goes into a hospital on any given day. So from the ground up, food, wheelchairs, bed linens, paper towels, MRI machines, CAT scan machines, blankets, etc. We as a organization work and take that collective buying power of the 4,400 hospitals and healthcare systems and negotiate costs on behalf of them. And because we have such a high buying power, we're able to lower the cost, like a Sam's Club, you know, where you buy in bulk and you ultimately save price on that price per item. That's what we're doing with the health system. So at any given time, we have about $69 billion in group purchasing volume going through our organization. Now, we don't touch that, but it goes through, and that's how much our health systems are spending on stuff. And how we make our money off of that is by charging a small percentage of administrative fee. But even just a small percentage of 69 billion is a whole heck of a lot of money. And so that's predominantly what we were known for in the marketplace for years, is helping hospitals save money. Then we hired software engineers and data scientists to come on board, and they have since developed tools that give us supply chain data, financial data, patient data, physician data. And that's where that 45% of US hospital discharges comes from, is these tools. And what it gives us is all of this discharge information and looking at ways that we can ultimately improve the patient's overall outcome, as well as their experience while they're in the hospital. So how can we prevent mortality? How can we prevent slip and falls while in the hospital? How can we improve just the total experience that the patient receives from entering the emergency room to discharge? And ultimately, we're looking at ways that we can make an impact in that space. So just to reiterate, we work with 4,400 hospitals to reduce the cost of all the stuff and services going into the hospital, while at the same time looking at ways to make an impact in healthcare and improve the patient's outcome and experience. Any questions about that before I dive into some like interview tips and tricks?
I am just kind of curious, how did you get into Premier?
So I had a former colleague who moved over to Premier and raved about it from a culture perspective. So I think our culture is one of the best things about our organization. And I think the reason is because we hire folks that want to make an impact in healthcare. So there's just that passion and there is that respect and collaboration that really echoes whether we're in our office or remote. So I've been with Premier for over 7 years. And when I first came to Premier, I knew this was a company that I was going to be with for a while because I was at that stage in life where I just got married. I knew I wanted to start a family, and I knew Premier would be the best place to really have that flexibility to do so. And then they tacked on some extra things of maternity leave and paid family leave. And so it made it even more enjoyable. And we celebrate all those wins here at Premier, but we also celebrate, people unfortunately leaving and going to other things or other things at Premier. So we just have a really great culture at the end of the day. And that's definitely what keeps me on top of what we do on a day-to-day, just in terms of improving healthcare.
Love that. And I don't know if you can, so there is a question in the chat. Justin says, how is Premier able to negotiate costs other than using its representation/buying power?
Through data. So I mentioned earlier that we have software engineers that develop some of these tools. So we have something called Supply Chain Advisor, or I think now we call it Spend Advisor, that gives us the data of the health system and where they are spending their money. And we analyze that data to do a couple of different things. How can we reduce costs based on maybe they're buying supplies from 5 different vendors, and if they reduce that to 2 that are on contract with Premier, they can save $12 a box, which ultimately leads to $12 million a year. I'm just using very easy numbers, but that's one way. And then another way is through waste reduction and process improvement. So we have consultants that go out and actually work in the health system with the supply chain professionals on figuring out ways to improve or reduce waste. So that could be anything from inventory and logistics to data and technology to value analysis, which is more clinical supply chain in nature. Great question. Any other questions? Cool. Okay. So where I'm going to be spending a lot of my time today is on some interview tips and tricks. So I run our internship program here at Premier. And so I was thinking about it from, I'm in school, how much relevant experience do I have? What should and shouldn't I mention in the interviews? But also some things that maybe students and or seasoned professionals might overlook. And so these are some of the things that come to mind. And I'm going to take time just to talk about a little bit of each of them, but certainly open to engaging conversation or any other questions that you might have about what I bring up. So the first one that I always think is really important is research not only the role of the company, but the industry as well. So if I am talking to a student and they are not familiar with Premier, but they applied to the role, it's a little disheartening when they're like, no, I don't know anything about it. I just applied because I saw it was in Charlotte. Well, you have your phone at your fingertips 23 hours out of the 24-hour day, I'm sure. So do a little bit of homework while you're waiting for the professor to start class or waiting for your to-go order. So make sure you definitely do the homework on the company. I think that Premier has been doing a phenomenal job increasing our social media presence. So not only there do we highlight some of our staff or some of their awards and accomplishments that they've received, but also we talk about different things. So back a couple of months ago, our executive team went and rang the bell in New York City for the stock exchange. And that was sort of representing 10 years for one of our supply chain parts of our business, as well as our new president and CEO. And so we post about it on social media, and it was a really big thing for us. We are newer to being public, and so just something like that, a hiring manager would love to talk about that because that is an accomplishment for Premier. Also on our Premier's website, we also have press releases and coverages, as well as we have a blog. So we have employees that are paid professionals that do that for us, and we really encourage you to utilize that. One of the fun tips that I have is setting up Google Alerts. Whether it's a company that you are not offered a position for, but continue to stay interested in, there is no harm when you see something come across from a Google alert to reach out to that hiring manager and say, congratulations on this, or to the recruiter, tell me more about this. It just shows your interest in the company, and we're probably going to remember that. And if and when another position presents itself that fits your background, we're going to reach out to you directly about that. So always keep them at your fingertips. I have several Google alerts, my husband's company, my brother's company, just to have some conversations with folks when want to talk shop. So that's one big thing. You have to come prepared. So make sure you research the company. It wouldn't hurt to also research the industry. There's a lot going on in the healthcare space right now. So even asking broad questions about the industry will show that you have come prepared. So I mentioned earlier about how do I talk about my experience when I'm an entry level or an intern candidate? So my recommendation is take a look at the position that you've applied for and tailor your answers to some of the things that are relevant with your background and your resume to the job description. So you have to review it beforehand, and this is all about preparation, and you need to practice your responses. I highly, highly recommend using your experience from courses, projects, past internships, team extracurricular activities. They all can be relevant when looking at the role and where your experience lies and how it directly relates to the job description. So there's nothing wrong with putting them on two screens and saying, okay, I can talk about this bullet and this is how. I can talk about this bullet and this is how. And quite frankly, I know we're not talking about resume writing tips, but there's nothing wrong with adding some of those things to your resume as well before the interview or before applying to really catch the eye of the recruiter. So on top of being prepared, you need to have questions. For every time I heard they didn't have any questions from me, I would be a rich person if I got a penny for every single time. You have to have questions prepared. Yes, you're going to have some of those standard questions. Tell me about a day in the life. Tell me why you like Premier. But you have to have questions, a laundry list of them prepared, whether it's relevant to the role, to the company, or to the industry. These questions that you ask at the end of the interview are important, both to give you the opportunity to find out more, but also to show the interviewer that you're engaged, you're inquisitive, and you want to keep learning about the role in the company. Make sure that they haven't already answered that question during the conversation. So you have to be very in tune during the whole interview process. Some best questions to ask are certainly, what are some important qualities? How does the company help employees with their career progression? Because as an intern or as an entry-level talent, you want to know about growth. You don't want to know about growth 6 months into the internship or to the role, but you do want to grow with the company. And certainly, how is the team structured? Because I think that will make an impact too on if you were going to be interested in the role. So this is one of my favorites. So I played college soccer, and my college soccer coach embedded in my brain, early is on time and on time is late. So I highly, highly encourage, if you are meeting or having an interview in person, do a test run before you go to that location, if at all possible. Understand where the parking is, if you have to be paying, if you're paying for parking, if it's going to be validated, how long it takes to park in the parking deck and get to the location. All of those things really make a big impact. It's a-okay to be 5 minutes early to an interview versus 3 minutes late. Because then how would you be on time for meetings after you join the company? So that's something to think about. Another thing from this virtual proponent that we are in now that our recruiting coordinator does, and I love it, is we do all of our virtual interviews utilizing Microsoft Teams. Some people might be comfortable with that, some people might not be. So she offers the opportunity to do a test run with them prior to their interview, which I think is huge, and I love that she does that. Some people take her up on it, some people don't. But if you're working with a recruiter or a coordinator and they don't offer that and you need it, ask them for it. They will love that. So do that. And then certainly make sure that you are in an area that's distraction free and you have reliable internet, right? Those are some of the things that I think are really important. But there is nothing wrong with popping onto that virtual interview a couple of minutes before to test out your audio. How do you look on camera? All of those things I think are still really important. You need to treat it as a face-to-face interview. And quite frankly, that's what I share with my hiring managers as well. Would you show up with your dog sitting on your lap to a face-to-face interview? Would you show up in a t-shirt to your face-to-face interview? So I think that it's really important to know that our hiring managers are doing the same. So before I go to the next page, any questions about those four? Anything I could elaborate on? Awesome. Okay. So this is probably easier said than done, to stay calm during an interview. So try to calm your nerves on the day by not obsessing about what's ahead. Sometimes that's easier said than done. You know what calms you down, so do those appropriate things to ensure that you are not being a chatterbox or not saying anything at all. Always remember, it is normal to be a bit nervous, and most employers expect it to be. So a couple of things that I think would help combat those nerves is smile and give a firm handshake. Nothing can go wrong with that. Ask a short icebreaker question when you first arrive. How's your day going? Oh, what about this weather? It's so dreary in Charlotte. Or maybe you notice that on their laptop, they have a sticker of a sports team that you like. Strike up conversation that way. Anything that can really break the ice and make you feel comfortable is going to go a long way. I see no problem telling them that you're nervous. I think it also allows them to be like, listen, I was nervous too, or allows you to show that like they understand and they are receptive to that, and they'll do things that also make you feel comfortable. I do think the more you prepare, the less nervous you will be. And the way you have your answers down and the way you're able to reiterate some of your responses will definitely calm those nerves for you. Last but certainly not least, and this goes for in-person and virtual, is to really think about your posture. Make sure you're sitting up straight and you're not fidgeting. I think all of those really make an impact too, and definitely be mindful of your background. I think everybody that I'm viewing right now has a great background, but just be mindful of that. We do understand that there are instances that you might be in your dorm room, and that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that we're not looking at something inappropriate. All of those are pretty self-explanatory, but I do like to mention it. So answering questions concisely. This is probably the second feedback that I receive from managers in two senses. One, they rambled a ton, which we can coach, or they did not provide enough information. Again, we can coach, but if we have to pull the information out of you, we might have to do that in real sense of the term, in a real opportunity for a full-time position. So keep in mind that the interview will likely start with a few general opening questions. Tell me about yourself. When asked this, try not to launch into your entire life story, as that is not really what they're asking. What it means is, tell us in a few sentences why you're a relevant candidate to this company, to this role. So things like your degree, your university, your past internships might be where you really need to focus your time and attention when you're telling about yourself. You can also mention things like where you're from. That might be a really good icebreaker, and especially if you did your homework and you looked at them on LinkedIn and noticed that they're from the same hometown or your best friend's hometown. That would be a really good icebreaker as well. Although these are just like break the ice questions, don't take them too informal, because first impressions are incredibly important. So keep that in mind. Adding on to that, and the next thing is examples are key, guys. I tell you what, I remember the people that are able to paint a picture and tell me a story about their example. And examples can be anything from your coursework to your school projects, extracurriculars, previous work, internship experience, etc. So you can expect on follow-up questions is that they will want to draw from examples and experiences to test some of your competencies. So this will really help you be prepared for that by having these examples written down and have practiced ahead of time how you would answer some of those questions using your example. So interviewers don't want to hear about everything that you've been doing at one particular course or one particular school project. They want to have a variety of examples. So try to have an example prepared from each different topic: extracurricular, internship, project work, coursework. So how did you work as part of a team? Great. Let's talk about the project I work on my class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. How did you handle a time where you felt overwhelmed with work? Okay, great. I can probably tie in everything I did this semester to this answer. And being able to really provide those examples and being able to talk about it clear and concisely and to the point. If you're virtual, use it to your advantage. Have your notes out in front of you. Make sure you talk about every topic. Refer to your resume. You can even do that in person. As you hand the interviewer your resume, you can have yours out in front of you too. There is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we think it's easy to talk about ourselves, but sometimes especially when we are nervous, we tend to ramble or we forget. And then last, but certainly not least, the thank you email. I would definitely say emails are the way to go. You can do a handwritten note. I do think emails just make the most sense in terms of a timing perspective. So a couple of things you can do is get the interviewer's contact information after the interview from them directly or receive it from the recruiter. Either is fine. But use this time to really seal the deal. Reiterate why you are the best candidate. Maybe even strike up the common interests that you had from the same hometown or the same sports team so they can remember you that way. One thing I can tell you is that a thank you email certainly does not hurt if it's grammatically correct and sent within a great time frame and reiterates all of the topic points. If it is an email that does not have correct grammar or rambles, that would be a cause for concern. So while most thank you emails do not hurt candidates, there have been instances where they do. The same recruiting coordinator that I talked about earlier, she sometimes fields them for me and is like, you need to look at this one before you send it over, because there are some issues and that could easily change the hiring manager's mind. But I do think that thank you emails are important. When we are debriefing candidates, I will say most times that's something that they bring up as a pro for the candidate. So-and-so sent me an email. It was really well written. They put really good points in the email. I think that now brings them to the top candidate. So little things like that do really make a big impact. All right, so those are sort of like my top 8. I talked about a lot. There's a lot more, but I really think that these are the things that are most important. Any questions about that piece before I go in and just do a little extra blurb on Premier? Okay.
Actually, Andrea,
So,
I do
yes.
have a question. Tell me about dress, because that's one thing that we didn't really address. And I think that's one thing that we're trying to even explore in our office of like, COVID, I feel like has shifted this idea of professionalism. I think as a whole society, we're just even taking a look at the word professionalism and what it means. And dress is certainly a big part of that. So what is the dress experience? What's the kind of the expectation from Premier's perspective?
That's a great question. So dependent upon the role, I would say, so for example, we have a consulting practice where when they are on site at a client, which is the health system, they are in a suit and a tie. So they would expect that the candidates that are interviewing be dressed the same exact way. Now, the interviewer might not be dressed that way, but we want to see how you would present yourself to a client. So I think that that's really important. And I do make mention of that to my candidates that are interviewing for consulting roles. For all of our other positions that are not 75% client facing, I certainly wouldn't go with the t-shirt during an interview, but I don't think a business suit or jacket would be required for all. I don't think it hurts, but I definitely don't think it's a must. I do think that you should look professional in nature with your hair and your appearance, and less is more in that, in my opinion, from that perspective, because you don't want to be distracting. But I don't think a business suit or jacket or tie, for that matter, is absolutely necessary. I think it doesn't hurt, though. Are you guys seeing that too, or is that where you're struggling?
Yeah, so I think it's always been this funny. It really depends on the industry. Some industries are much more casual, right? If you're doing like construction management, some engineering where you're out in the field. I think there's always been a little bit of industry dependent. I think COVID has certainly shifted employers to be a little more casual. And so, and even just trying to figure out, as a whole, what does professionalism look like, even for our staff in terms of attire? So just curious if that's been something that you all have been experienced. But so I think a lot of what you've said is kind of what we've generally kind of defaulted to as well. I'd rather dress over than under if you're interviewing.
I completely agree. And quite frankly, I would say that would also just go for after you land an internship or a full-time opportunity. If I know that I just have meetings all day with my peers, they see me at my worst and they see me at my best. So I don't care if they see me with my hair up in a bun and no makeup on. But for example, this morning, I was presenting to our SVP of people, aka HR, who's my boss's boss. I really wanted to make a strong impact. So I ensured that the dog was put away so they couldn't hear her bark. I ensured that I actually had makeup done, did my hair. I didn't put my contacts in, but that's fine. But I wanted to dress for the position that I want to be in the future, not the position I have in now. And so that's something that I always take in consideration. If I'm talking to my boss, again, she's seen me at my worst and she's seen me at my best, that's fine. But we're incorporating a leader. I ensure to make sure I dress appropriately for that. I want to make sure that she knows that that's how I would present myself to her peers if I was ever in that situation. So that's just something to keep in mind, is who is your audience as well. Great question though. But for the most part, I will say Premier, very casual, pre-pandemic, very casual. Now, I mean, hats are absolutely fine if we're on video with people. I wouldn't encourage you to do that day one, but I've been on a leadership call in our IT space, and a few of them were wearing hats and like just baseball caps. And I think that's fine. Again, when you're with your peers and having conversations, there's no need. But you get a sense for that first before you do it. You don't show up in day one with a baseball cap or a winter hat on. So I do want to highlight our internship program. So last year was our first summer hosting interns in a virtual capacity. It went really well, and we are doing that again this year. So we are really focusing on students that are graduating August 22 or later and interested in healthcare, data, supply chain technology, etc. It is going to be a 12-week internship where we really expose you to real meaningful work, our executive team, and then you also really participate in our culture, which is team building events, volunteer activities, educational sessions, learning and development sessions, etc. You have to reside in the continental United States in order to participate in our internship this summer, but you can live on the West Coast and work West Coast hours if that's something you want to do. It's going to be from May 16th to August 5th. Roughly a 40-hour work week, and interns will be paid, compensated based on your experience and skill set, as well as the position. Because we are a healthcare improvement company, we have taken the stance that all students must be vaccinated unless an accommodation is required by our employee relations team, and that's something I would work with you on. And our ultimate goal for our internship program is to give you exposure to Premier and all the great things that we do in healthcare, get you to have a taste for our culture and ensure that's something that you think you could be successful working in. And then ultimately, hopefully have you join us after graduation. Last year, we had approximately 75%-ish, give or take, interns available for hire. I think I've hired about 35 to 40% of them so far, and I'm still working on 3 more opportunities for past interns now as well. So I hope our number will be at 50% or a little bit above, which I'm excited for, and we hope to carry that over into the following years as well. And then one last thing, you're probably like, oh, that's all great and well. Here's some of our positions. So we still have a few positions open. We've got some in the technical space. We do have a new part of our business that's hosting interns this year that's really around research-based clinical healthcare. So think about clinical trials. This particular team does a lot of work with that. So it's a lot of research-based work. And then we have our supply chain positions as well. We do have entry-level positions, again, all across the spectrum: data, software engineer, consulting, and supply chain. The big thing I would say for intern and entry-level roles is we really need someone that is strong from an analytical component. So Excel at a minimum, SQL, Tableau, Power BI, Python, Java. All of those things would only add value when you're working with Premier. And then we have a list of probably 100+ positions open on our careers page, which is just premierinc.com/careers. Encourage you to check that out. So I'll stop there. That's my spiel for today, guys. What questions, thoughts do y'all have for me?
Hi, Andrea. Thank you for coming here today and speaking with us. I do have a question. So I'm a graduating Master's of Public Health student at UNC Charlotte in May. And so you were stating of the internship opportunities turning into full-time positions. And so I already have my internship fulfilled for the program, but would it be possible for me to still apply, or should I lean towards the entry-level positions?
Lean towards the entry-level roles. For a couple of reasons. One, we want to hire you after graduation, but sometimes we don't have positions available come August, and they're more like December, the following May timeframe. But two, there have been instances where we sometimes hired folks that would be graduating in May and start the internship in May, and unfortunately they would have left like halfway through the internship for a full-time opportunity. And that's just a bummer, because then someone else could have done that role. So really, we have you, someone that's graduating in May of 22, lean towards our full-time positions, and we are actively hiring May 2022 grads right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that question, because
You're so welcome.
Because it's March, I didn't know how early it was the beginning of the May 2022 graduates. And do you all look at public health graduates or epidemiology, because that's the concentration I'm currently in?
Yes, we do. So we have someone who is interning for us this summer that is one of our master's students, and she has the epidemiology background, and she's doing consulting for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And just to get a little bit more into like my mindset, it's March. You interview, that might take 2 to 6 weeks, depending upon availability, process, etc. We're already end of April. We run our background check. We ensure we have successful onboarding. We're mid to end of May. So now's the time for entry-level talent to really start looking.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
See,
All right, Justin, I see you. How may the interview process look like in terms of the graduate school? Pretty similar. Yes. Very similar in the sense that dependent upon the role, the interview process could differ. So for some of our positions, we do like a first round phone interview, followed by, we like to issue Excel assessments, not a pass or fail by any means, but just to really get a sense for your analytical capabilities. And if we were to hire you, where would be the areas that you could hit the ground running when it comes to data, but then also areas for opportunities and growth when it comes to data. After that step, then we usually have 1 or 2 video interviews. And those would be with the hiring managers, the directors, the VPs, to really give you some situational questions. So how would you handle this situation? What would you do if this were to occur? And certainly some behavioral. And then there have been teams from time to time that would throw in a brain teaser. So anything can happen. I can't control my interview teams. So just be prepared for everything and anything during the interview process. Any other questions? If not, my contact information is at the bottom. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if there is a particular position that you applied for. I can either talk to you about that specific role or connect you with one of my colleagues that's working on those opportunities.
I did have a question.
Yes.
So I'm a undergraduate junior right now in health systems management, and I'm really just looking into internships that can get me any type of experience within healthcare, because management roles, you kind of need to have a good understanding of all,
Yep.
maybe, and like an
Yep.
overview. So do you think maybe starting with a company like Premier may be better than starting maybe within hospitals?
I think either or would be beneficial. So let's just say, for example, you do land an opportunity in a health system. We love hiring people from the health system because you have been embedded and you know exactly how to operate, and you know some of the trials and tribulations that are being experienced in a health system. On the other side, though, we love being able to hire entry-level talent that we can mold and train on our own and don't have processes put in place already and are sort of stuck in that shell that they learned in the health system. With caveat to that, health systems love hiring people from Premier. So I don't think you could go wrong, to be completely honest with you. I do think that it would be important, especially with your major, to at some point experience a health system, whether that be during internship or after graduation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for your question. Anything else?
Sorry, I had another question.
Yes.
Can you talk more about the maternal leave aspect and how you chose Premier because of the culture? Because I was just more interested in that.
Yeah. So I have the longest tenure on my team, and I joined Premier, like I said, right after I got married, and knew this was a place that I wanted to start a family, not only for the paid maternal and paternity leave, but also for just the flexibility that I would receive after having children. For those that don't know, it takes a village to raise a family, and you need a flexibility of a workplace to make that happen too. And so what first got me was that how involved not only my managers and leaders were in their employees' lives for the good, but then also the fact that we listen to our employees. So let me provide a few examples. Prior to deciding to have children, a couple of employees brought up that they would love some type of leave for having children. So first we implemented a week, and that week made up for some of the things that employees lost before short-term disability kicked in. And then we knew to be competitive in the market, we had to increase it to 4. And then I just so happened to be walking by our former SVP of people who has since retired. And I had just come back from my first maternity leave, and she was asking me how it was. And I said, I wish I had more time. I was not ready to come back, but I knew I wanted to come back. And she said, that is something that we've been looking into. Obviously, there is a cost effect to that, because anything longer than 4 weeks, we might have to bring a temp in. So then you're essentially paying 2 people's salaries and all of that. So that is still something that they're looking at. The one thing that they did expand was it is now called a paid family leave. So it's for moms and dads welcoming home children from birth, adoption, foster, or surrogacy, as well as anybody that is taking care of an immediate family member, especially during these last couple of years with COVID. If there is a family member that has fallen ill and you want to take time out to care for them, you can take week increments off and have it fully paid, not dipping into your paid time off. Another thing that we noticed that we needed to increase our PTO time. It was decent, 15 days, not bad. It's now increased to 20. And 5 of those days carry over, which is really nice, on top of sick time and holiday pay. We've increased our amount that employees are paid for their cell phone and their home internet, $40 a month, we increased it. So we are listening to our employees and we value them and their opinions. There's some things that we can't, right? 6 months maternity leave is never going to happen. A 100% work environment will never happen, but flexibility has definitely been key, which is really important. So I'm now 100% remote, but I live 5 minutes from our corporate office, so I can go in whenever I want. And one of the business leaders is coming in next week, and so I'll pop in, say hi to him, grab lunch with him, and then head home. And so having the flexibility to do that, but also the want, right? Like I want to meet with my leaders is really nice too. And so it's just a really respectful, innovative, collaborative, appreciative environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so welcome. I love the question, so thank you. I would encourage you all to check out our careers page, check out our social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And let me know if you have any questions.
Well, Andrea, thank you again for being here. Thank you, students, for coming. Your great questions. Hopefully that was helpful. So again, Andrea, thank you so much.
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone has a great rest of your week.
Yeah, have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.